So whatever you guys do, keep on practicing whatever exercise they give you, and that's how I learned, is learn through the exercises. I didn't even have to study all the theoretical parts of the books. I just said, okay, I have 3 CDs over here that have about 2,000 exercises. I grabbed every single one of them after work and just performed them, and just to see what they're looking for. And then I went back to the books and said, okay, this is what they're looking for: quotient medius sternum, apical expansion, whatever. So when it comes to cueing, grounding is what helped me a lot. Understanding how to feel weight on a surface, on a shoulder, on a hip, on all fours. You know, we're getting on all fours sometimes, and we say, okay, just breathe into your back. Maybe that's not enough. Maybe they need to sit down. Actually, they need to stay there, absorb that thinking of, shit, I'm on the ground now. Do I feel like my arms are on the ground? Do I feel my knees pressing the floor? They start feeling more muscle activity that way. They feel more grounding. The more grounded you are, the more your parasympathetic nervous system that we're going to talk about starts to kick in, without even breathing at all. You don't even have to breathe to get a nervous system to calm down, believe it or not. Even though breathing is the only direct way of how to regulate your nervous system, there are other ways too. So, to help you guys with the exercise of how we prescribe, take grounding into consideration. It's going to help you with your cueing a lot. All right, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, Re-Kinect is actually a course I teach, but I had to condense it a little bit to talk more about just grounding. There's a lot more information on there that I have during my courses that I provide. But today I want to speak more obviously about grounding, but I'm going to touch a little bit also about breathing mechanics, how that occurs, because even though we all taken PRI before, still we need to know the proper mechanics of breathing. If we understand the mechanics and the position that a rib cage is in, we'll understand where our line of gravity falls into. Does it fall to our heels? Does it fall to our toes? That's where do we feel the ground? Do we feel it on our toes, on our heels, midfoot, outer feet? That's what we need to find out through positioning of the rib cage. Okay. Some facts about me. I don't know if you guys know, the way I got influenced by PRI, especially as a physical therapist, was because of a motorcycle accident. Literally I fell off a cliff. I was in Greece, fell off a cliff. I was driving my motorcycle, and then I was just paralyzed from the waist down. So being unable to sense and feel and move, especially from the waist down, you understand the appreciation of legs after the fact that we're all able to stand and walk. So ever since then, that's how PRI had a dramatic effect on me, because it helped me sense again. A few more things: physical therapy. I started in Greece. I studied sports medicine in Cyprus, and then I went to Oxford actually when I was in England. That's where I learned most of my kinesio tape and my Brazen tools. And then I moved here in 2011, never looked back. And ever since that day, guys, it's just been continuing education nonstop, from FMS to IESTM courses, you name it. So these are some of the courses that I've done: NKT, PRI, SFMA. I would say that DNS and PRI are some of the most hardcore for me, where they dive very deep into the neural system. Another thing that I don't have up here yet, because I'm still taking their courses, is Z-Health. You may want to look into that too. It's pretty awesome. When it comes to neurology and the brain, it will blow your brains out. Now, before we get into grounding, I'm going to talk a little bit about posture. Now, just like Ron Harashva says, posture is a reflection of the position of many systems that are regulated, determined, and created through limited functional patterns. These patterns reflect our ability and inability to breathe, rotate, and rest symmetrically. In other words, that paragraph is called neutrality. That's what we call neutrality when it comes to PRI, or generally in the body. Not do we have a neutral spine or do we have a neutral posture. It's do you have neutrality all over your body on every system? Endocrinological system, respiratory, you name it. Limited functional patterns due to inherited structural asymmetries that would create movement restrictions and compensations throughout life. So we know that we have asymmetries, especially within the rib cage. Posture is asymmetrical and posture is dynamic as well as static. So when we take a look at a person's posture, we care more about how it looks dynamically, not so much as static. How does the person move? So a client comes to you and says and tells you, oh shit, my right shoulder looks lower than my left. You're human, look at that. I care about how you move, not about how it looks. Since I deal with a lot of bodybuilders, imagine how conscious these guys are about, oh shit, my shoulder doesn't look good. No, don't even worry about it, man, you're fine. Joint by joint approach, I don't believe in that when it comes to PRI. There's no such thing. All I know is that I need stability on certain areas in my body and mobility on other areas. When it comes to the joint by joint approach, PRI doesn't apply well. Now, body weight position and the ground. So we all know we have 3 lobes of the lungs on the right and there's only 2 on the left, right? We also know that we have a bigger right diaphragm with a smaller left diaphragm. There's more dopamine production on the greater on the left hemisphere. Even the heart matters when it comes to its location, but its orientation. So for example, we all know we have the lungs more on the right, 2 on the left. They'll gear us this way. But we have other things on the left side that counterbalance that. We're going to talk about which muscles those are too. But if you guys now look at the heart, we know that the heart is to the left. But where is the lower pole of the heart directed? Is it looking more to the right or to the left? To the left, right? So now, that little rotation of the heart will actually push you to the left, but actually the cardiac output from the aorta that is pushing back this way pushes you back to the right. Do you see how that works? So the ventricles of the heart will push you to the left since it goes down, but then when the aorta pushes back up, it'll push you back to the right. So you see, whenever you guys stand on 2 legs and close your eyes, and you guys are going to start seeing that you're swaying a little bit. That little sway is coming from the heart. That's pretty cool stuff, right? So now, that now determines our body weight and where we feel most of the ground. First thing I ask when it comes to my clients or my patients is stand on 2 legs and tell me which heel do you feel the most. 95% of them will tell me the right. Okay, so that's when I take them to a left adductor pullback, for example. We all know that exercise, right? And then they're like, oh shit, I feel my left. All right. That tells me that where do they place their pressure on by not only realigning their hips, but also changing pressure up here, which we're going to talk about a lot. There's different pressures on interthoracic cavity that we have to regulate. Does that make sense so far? Now, muscles that help us, I would say, stabilize our postures in the upright position. Diaphragm, we already know, larger on right, smaller on left. More domed on the right, flatter on left. That is very important. Another muscle, though, that kind of helps us offset from staying too much on the right, or actually from taking our rib cage and really bringing it to a right side bend, is that triangularis sterni muscle. You guys look at that muscle, which it's kind of hard to actually find an actual triangularis sterni anatomy chart, but it's muscles on the inside of the rib cage. You guys are going to see that on the left side, there's additional fibers. Let's say there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels that the triangularis sterni looks like this, and another side looks like this on the right side. on that left side, there's an additional muscle of that triangle, additional fibers that attach to another rib on top, which basically helps us exhale. That's what a triangularis muscle sterni does. It helps us blow out the air. So what that means is that since our left side likes to inhale so much, that triangularis sterni will take some of these ribs and be like, yo, let's just keep you a little bit deflated, because if we inflate you so much, meaning if that muscle didn't exist, this whole left side will be so flared out and will be like this. So it basically offsets and counterbalances out on that left side. Does that make sense so far? Now, when it comes to respiration, we all know breathing is the origin of all movement patterns. I like what Jason said here. Jason Massey is one of the PRI guys. The manner in which all individuals breathe affects their appearance and function between the head, thorax, and pelvis, and predicts the level of discomfort an individual may experience throughout their lifetime from both a physical and physiological standpoint. Like the guy nailed it there, okay? That's how important breathing is when it comes to the human body. It's not only that, I always get this question, since we're all asymmetrical, why don't we all have pain on our left SI joint or right SI joint or one shoulder? Well, maybe it's because I have better awareness than you do. I have better body awareness. I know how to move my joints. I know how to move a rib cage a little bit better than somebody else, such as a bodybuilder that's locked into extension. A bodybuilder, for example, doesn't have that kind of mind-muscle connection, or actually mind-body position connection, as somebody that has done breathing for a long time. So the biggest challenge that I see on everyone, and you're all going to see that, is not can they breathe well, but can they blow out the air in general. We just love constantly inhaling. That gets us on our toes a lot. The more toes we press down, the less heels are on the floor, the less grounding we feel. The less grounding we feel, the less muscles we're able to stimulate, such as glutes and hamstrings. Now, when it comes to the diaphragm, we know that the diaphragm is responsible for calm inhalation, not forced. Okay, so if I gently inhale, that's what the diaphragm does. Done. Further from that, which muscles do you think are the ones that are going to help a lot more to breathe air in? Neck? SCM. There's more. How about lumbar rectors? Right? Valsalva. Right? Really lock those rectors. So you got now rectors, you got neck, you got a change in body position. Okay? Just like it says over there, it dictates body position at rest and with movement. Now, at rest, if I have a bodybuilder or a powerlifter or a girl that went out last night, started doing some fist pumps on heels, and wakes up the next day, says I have pain on my lower back and my neck, all because of this, right? That means that at rest, this is their rest, and they're still having pain, they're still having tightnesses. So I'm looking to change first their position at rest, and then take them into athletics. Does that make sense? So the diaphragm tells us also on which side are we on. Are we on our left side, or are we on our right side? I'm going to talk about that a little bit when it comes to how the position of the diaphragm, which one's domed and which one's flatter, that tells us at which side of our bodies are we on, mostly on. So, asymmetrical diaphragm, we know that it's domed more on the right side, which basically will tell you that it has a decrease in interthoracic pressure, whereas the flatter left leaflet of the diaphragm will have an increased interthoracic pressure. And of course, we all know, I hope, we have a stronger and larger crura on the right. You know that big tendon that's coming out from the right side, and a small leg comes out from the left. That also changes the position of the pelvis. Okay, so we have a stronger tendon on that right side that will pull you more to the right, giving you a much more tighter right abdominal wall. So the body wants to move away from the path of least resistance. If I have more air pressure on this left side because of a flatter diaphragm, the body wants to get away from that inflated side. It wants to stay at the deflated side. Okay? That's your typical left AIC pattern, right BC. Okay? If you have now a guy that's a PEC, especially with flared out ribs on both sides, his body weight is not only going to be almost on his right, but it's going to be front at the same time. All right, so that's where I have to think about, where does he feel the ground? PECs will also tell you, I feel like I'm on my toes all the time. And that's because you are. All right? And tell me, which toes are they? I feel my right. All right. So got a really tight calf there. Most oftentimes, you're going to see hammer toes. If you see hammer toes, your mind should go psoas, not even glutes. And I had a discussion that with Perry Nicholson one time. Like, dude, hammer toes are caused by psoas, not by glute max. Okay? Glute max and psoas, they go together, but more the psoas, because the psoas pushes a leg down. That's what it does. So we get hammer toes on the right side because it's trying to grasp the ground. It can't reach. Does that make sense? So especially if you see hammer toes, you're going to see that leg will also be way shorter, i.e. scoliosis. Okay? So just focus on psoas training.
You need to strengthen the psoas, you're saying?
On the right. That does not mean hip flexor strengthening, but more pushing. You're going to see that, like in myokinematic, I think they show something like that. Elongating the right leg, for example.
Okay.
Can I show you anything like that?
Yeah.
All right, so anything, if I stand on my left and I push the floor down, I feel my glute max, but also my psoas is also doing an anterior rotation of that pelvis. The anterior rotation floors down the leg. You got that?
Yeah.
Now, a few things about the autonomic nervous system we all know. Okay? Sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. We know a lot about the nervous system. I'm assuming that what increases it is stimulus or hyperinflation, visual inputs, anything. Like, you live in New York especially, yeah, you're gonna have a sympathetic nervous system that's skyrocket. The one thing I want you to get out of this now is the last sentence. Extension, abduction, and external rotation increase sympathetic nervous system activity. All right, so now, what I just described is a PEC, for example, right? You all know what a PEC is? No? Okay. PEC is posterior extensor chain, meaning you have a guy that his entire posterior chain, not including hamstrings. When I say posterior chain, I'm talking mostly about thoracic area, like this, completely locked up. Okay. In PRI, if you're going to take it, you're going to learn left AIC, right BC, meaning he's not bilaterally locked, he's more on one side. Okay. Whenever you see, or whenever you promote extension, abduction, external rotation, if I just do this right now, my nervous system is going horribly, haywire. Just like Tony Robbins, like you want to feel energetic, you want to feel great, do this. Oh, what he's doing is he's stimulating your nervous system. That's great, but if we constantly stay like this, how are we going to get out of it now? That's why we're going to need to get into a parasympathetic state. When it comes into the parasympathetic state, flexion, adduction, and internal rotation will do that. All right? But when we want to promote flexion, adduction, internal rotation, the most important one that I have found so far is internal rotation. You will hear Ron say that, especially calling it advanced integration, and he said that maybe, I don't know, he said it here and there, but it made so much sense when he mentioned it. Internal rotation floors you. The reason why is, just if we learn in PT school, external rotation, right, causes distraction of a joint. Internal rotation causes compression. If I have a compressed joint through internal rotation, I have better muscular activity. I can feel more muscle. External rotation, not so much, because it's distracted away from the joint. Does that make sense? All right. Now, we all need to remember, we need to be familiar with where does the parasympathetic nervous system lie and where does the sympathetic nervous system lie. And this is why we need flexion, adduction, internal rotation, but mostly flexion. The blue one was the sympathetic nervous system. If my sympathetic duct is located in that thoracic area and we go into extension, we're compressing it, right? So imagine now paraspinal muscles in the back of that blue spinal cord, right? If that's being compressed by extension, your sympathetic nervous system is on and cannot shut off. Unless now I pull you on all fours, for example, and I round you back, where I'm actually stimulating now up here and down here, which is the ducts of the parasympathetic system, I get now more calm. All right, so that's how PRI tries to nail that one. Opening up a posterior mediastinum. What they're really trying to do is just calm your nervous system down, especially when it comes to a PEC. The first thing you got to do is calm them down. Not even, let's do some adductor pullbacks or anything like that. Get their nervous system down first. All right. Now, underground guys. This is the guy that made it all. Newton. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So, this helped me a lot when I was training at the gym. When we go to the gym, let's say we squat, right? I see nearly everybody squat and they make it into a pulling move, not even a pushing move. Meaning, they squat down and all of a sudden you see a neck and then you see a back. They're pulling themselves up. If you pull, you go into extension, the more sympathetic you are. The more sympathetic you are, the more higher neural tone you're going to have on your back, the more things tighten up and everything goes to shit. So what they're thinking now is, let me pull up this way because it's too heavy. They're looking at mirrors, seeing that, does it look good? Does it look nice and symmetrical? They're not even thinking that they have a floor underneath them. They're using a visual input, which 80% of vision is sensory. So that means that they're looking at them, thinking about, does it look good rather than does it feel good? Does that make sense? And they're using now a mirror that shows the exact opposite reflection of them, trying to correct something, and then they still have pain. You see, that's not true mind-muscle connection using a mirror. So you guys are training at the gym, stay away from mirrors. Now, to every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if I squat, for example, what do I need to think of? If I'm pushing the bar up, I'm pressing the floor down. That's grounded. Take my guy Chuck Norris. You all know who that is, right? He said, I'm not doing push-ups. I'm pushing the earth away. Shit, badass, but he was right. I gotta push that floor away because that's how I feel more muscle, right? Sensing the ground. Increase stability and awareness on dominant leg, usually the right, then non-dominant. So we usually sense the ground more on the right leg because we usually stand on it the most. A person with compromised grounding when walking will attempt to reground through faulty strategies such as leaning, extending the spine, turn on the neck, and tendency to lock out the knees, especially if you live in New York. This is all you're gonna see in New York. Or, this is all you're gonna see in New York. All right? Especially with cell phones, and our visions now become a lot more focal, especially with big skyscrapers, and we have no peripheral vision, we just see in front of us. We lose the sense of a ground because our vision now has become more focal as well. If you want to sense a ground, you gotta have peripheral vision. That's why sometimes I'm not an advocate of wearing glasses. Like frames like that, the frames, you're able to see through the lens, but you can still see blurriness through your peripherals. If you still sense, if you conceive that blurriness, you're not fully grounded. So if you have the option of wearing glasses or contacts, wear contacts. You sense the floor a lot more that way, okay? Grounding is decreased with individuals with excessive anterior pelvic tilt, forward head posture, hyperinflated rib cage, tight calves, hyperextended knees, improper footwear, you name it. All of this will get you off the floor, all right? Anterior pelvic tilt will give you a forward head posture. Forward head posture will get you on your toes, or hyperinflated rib cage, right? Tight calves, all of that leads to one another. They're all tied together. Ground reaction force is force provided by the surface an individual is moving on, which is the floor, and the reaction to the force that the body exerts on the ground. If the body's pushing down to the ground is pushing back up. That's all you gotta remember for grounding, just to sense the ground. Okay, it's more of a sense. So, if I'm in the upright posture, I have to sense that ground coming up. The only thing is, if you have a guy that has hyperextended knees and anterior pelvic tilt, it's gonna be very hard for them to sense the floor, unless they do one little thing, unlock their knees. Everybody stand up. Fully locked out knees. Alright. Now just unlock. Feels more of a floor now. Feels like you're pressing, right? So any time you have a guy that's, trying to be bodybuilder or something like that, you just tell him, make sure you never lock your knees when you're squatting, because you gotta still feel that tension. The moment you extend those knees, now it's just bone on bone, no more muscular activity, which is glutes and hamstrings, and then all the pressure now goes directly into the spine and into the neck, right? So that's just unlocking the knees will get you feeling the ground a little bit more. Cool. So now, just like in this picture, if I'm doing push-ups, I gotta push the floor away, not pull myself up. So if you guys have a client or a patient and they're doing push-ups, for example, and you see a lot of neck activity, you see a lot of shrugging, they're pulling themselves up. You just tell them, just feel like you're pushing the floor away. And notice how much chest and triceps you'll feel that way. The same thing when it comes to squatting. When it comes to squatting, pushing the floor down as opposed to lifting it up or pulling it up. Now, certain benefits of it: enhances pumping action of respiratory, circulatory, and lymphatic systems. So now, the calves, for example, which provide a lot of pumping, especially when it comes to circulation. If heels don't touch the floor, the calves don't work constantly, like contract, relax, contract, relax. If we're all on our toes all the time, the calf just remains tight like this. So when women get cold feet and hands, it's because those muscles are just not relaxing at all. Calves. Actually, the other fun fact for cold hands and feet is because your heart dropped. So women that love to hyperextend more, where's the heart? Here's the diaphragm, here's the heart. If that diaphragm goes any flatter, the heart drops. So cardiac output is delayed. It needs to push harder. But that little delay, we're talking like milliseconds of a delay, will cause cold hands and feet. Pretty cool, huh? Now, reduces inflammation response, increased muscular activity. That's why I highlighted it, because the sole purpose for me of grounding is, do they feel more muscle that way? Okay, I know this is kind of boring stuff, but again, it's the better stuff too. Now, insufficient grounding leads to increased neck tension, flat back, that's a big topic, anterior rib flare, belly breathing, atrophy of glutes, hamstrings, and abdominals, bouncy gait, decreased arm swing, person looks down, loss of trunk rotation. The list goes on. This is not even half of it. So whenever you see stuff like this, such as a guy that has a desk job that has no glutes, no hamstrings, they can't feel the ground for shit because they're sitting on their asses all day and they're not sensing the floor for 8 hours a day. They're just looking at a monitor, right? When we're looking at our phones, we're not aware of where we're going. We're just going and we just bump onto people and we keep on going. We're not sensing anything. Again, if you live in New York, where you have a road that's vibrating from a subway, that's not a ground, right? You want to feel ground, and actually, I don't even know why I'm wearing shoes like this. I should not even be wearing these shoes, because I don't believe that you have to be barefoot on an artificial floor. I would rather be barefoot on a mountain. That's a ground for me. If it's an artificial floor, these asymmetries are a lot more heightened when it comes to PRI. That's why Ron and PRI recommends shoes, because they're going by, you're still walking on artificial floors. Otherwise, we would not give you a shoe list if you were living up in the mountains. There's no point. Does that make sense? So, as we develop, will dictate of how our bodies will shape. Not just because of how we're made on the inside, lungs more on the right as opposed to the left, but even other habits. Like when your mom holds you by the arm all the time with your left, obviously your posture becomes that way. Sitting postures, oftentimes when we sit a lot for 8 hours a day, when we get up and we start looking like this, she looks exactly like that. That's her resting posture right there. All right, so she's feeling a ground way different than, Michelangelo's statue right there. He feels it all the way on his right. She's probably feeling on toes. All right, so what we focus on, you make more of. If you focus on sitting for 8 hours a day and you're not sensing the floor, the only one muscle that's going to kick in now to get you to stand up are those lower back muscles and those calves. Watch how people, they actually press toes down on the floor rather than heels when they get up. Because oftentimes when we're sitting, we don't have the heels all the time on the floor, we have the toes pointing down like this, right? So if we constantly do that, we don't sense the floor. So that's why, again, PRI says make sure you have something underneath your feet, because it provides a passive lift. When I have a lift on underneath my feet, it can sense the floor. The moment I can sense the floor, the more I can feel glutes and hamstrings, even without even moving my legs. As long as you sense glutes and hamstrings while you're sitting, you prevent them from atrophying. If you don't sense them, they atrophy. Make sense? Now, posture most common weightlifting movements, obviously this, right? You see that a lot. Overhead squats, regular squats, low bar, high bar, but my personal favorite, front squats. Why? Why do you think a front squat is better than a back squat?
Less extension.
Okay.
You're not necessarily loading extension posteriorly.
Exactly. So when I decrease my extension, or actually, let's put it this way, when the bar goes behind me, right? The rib cage spine has to go into extension to counterbalance, right? When the bar goes in front of me, rib cage has to sink in, or I deflate, right? I can still do a back squat, but definitely not low bar. If it goes low bar and your ribs flare out like this, yeah, you're not feeling the floor. If you go high bar, the only thing I will tell my guy is just spread out your arms. Let those back ribs move. Because if you prevent them from moving, you can't sense the floor and your weight is still on your toes. But again, I would still promote a front squat more than a back squat. If you have a powerlifter, he has no choice but to back squat. You just tell him grab the bar a little further out. And just sense your breath getting into your back as you're squatting down. That's what I tell him. Right? Deadlift. Right? We all deadlift like this, especially this whole left side. That just looks ridiculous. Too much damn extension, especially when the bar's in front of you. So I gear towards the hex bar, which the weight now is distributed now to the center of your body, not in front of you. So I'm gonna feel a lot more ground with the hex bar because now I'm pushing the floor down, not pulling up. The deadlift was never ever meant to be a pulling move. It's meant to be a pushing move. When you see the top guys actually deadlifting and powerlifting, you will see them, they're not pulling. They're smashing the floor down as the bar comes up. But they had to practice first through a hex bar to learn how to push a floor. Does that make sense? Bench, same exact thing. Top picture, that's what I deal with every single fucking day. That big rainbow arch, okay? Abs stretched out to the max. He's on toes. That guy's not feeling the ground. I like, though, the bottom picture. Or even the one on the left. Notice how the lower backs are actually kind of flat on the bench, right? If I'm on my back and I want to sense a floor, or i.e. a bench, you want to sense your entire back, not just your thoracic spine. Because if you're arching that lower back, you're again doing a bench press as a pulling move, even though it's a pushing move. If we arch our backs any further from that, that guy is not benching through pecs, he's benching through lats. He's doing a decline press now. Okay, he's depressing shoulder blades. If you guys see anybody that benches with their elbows going down, they're too lat dominant. They don't know how to bench like this. You ever guys heard of the guillotine press? All the way up here, the bar has to come up here to consider it to be a bench. Believe it or not, that's probably the healthiest bench press. Literally up to the neck, not even down here. Okay, if it goes down any further, lats will kick in. Don't be afraid to get the bar all the way up here. Your rotator cuffs should be fine. All right? So, extension when it comes to bench pressing, where would I press when I'm pushing the bar up? Or actually, what would be my cue in this position on a bench press? That every time I push the bar off me, I'm smashing my back into the bench. Does that make sense? So in a deadlift, for example, if I'm pulling the bar up off the floor, I'm smashing my legs into the ground. By the way, words mean big when it comes to people. If you tell a guy, press the wall, he'll press the wall. If you tell a guy, smash the wall, oh, now that's a ground. They love hearing words. It makes a big difference that I say, smash that left heel, smash that midfoot, and they actually do. They actually feel the floor. If you just tell them, make sure you press the left heel, make sure you press that right arch. No, it's not gonna work. Okay, you need to motivate them when it comes to cueing. All right. Shoulder press, same exact thing. A lot of too much damn extension. But the one thing I will lean more towards too would be palms facing each other. Right? I'm less into extension, I'm more into flexion. Remember what we said? Flexion, adduction, and internal rotation. If I have those components, most of them at least, I'm more floored. I'm more likely to feel a floor this way than I would do this way if I'm standing doing a shoulder press. All right? Now, James Anderson, one of the PRI instructors, best question he ever said, or best quote he ever said, it's not that we only want extension, but the question is, can you get out of it? So I'm not going to go to a powerlifter or a bodybuilder and tell them, you better not be benching like that, you better not be deadlifting like that. Who do I know? What do I know about powerlifting? He's going to a competition that requires you to do it a specific way. I'm not against that. I'm against, though, that he's trained that way and only that way. Does he know how to feel abdominals to counterbalance? Does he know how to feel glutes and hamstrings to counterbalance all those compensation patterns? Does he know how to get out of extension? The only way a bodybuilder or a powerlifter can stay safe within those extension parameters is feel a floor, at least. If you can't tell them you gotta flex, you gotta internal rotate, at least feel a floor. Because you're gonna save yourself from a lot of herniated discs and labrum tears and God knows what. Now, here's where you get interesting now with breathing. We know muscles of respiration, we all know this stuff, right? That inhalation, diaphragm, mastoid, scalenes, pec minor, lumbar erectors. When it comes to exhalation, the diaphragm relaxes, but with more forced exhalation, which we have the abdominals. We're going to talk about now what muscles we need to activate, or which muscles of the abs we need to activate depending on the shape of the ribcage. Exhalation causes internal rotation of the ribs. So remember when we said that. Internal rotation gives us more of a ground. External rotation gets us off the ground. So now, that means I have a right side. Let's take a right BC pattern, which is whole right side. Most of the ribs are down, internally rotated. Most of the ribs on the left are externally rotated. I have more IR and ER here. I have more of a floor here. So when I give a standing exercise, PRI, I gotta make sure that these ribs IR, and then I'm gonna sense a floor. I have people saying, I'm trying to feel my adductor here, but I can't feel it. Okay, blow out all the air. I don't feel it. Blow it even harder. But I got it. Those ribs internally rotated, that help my left femur internal rotate even more. When you get IR somewhere above, chances are you're going to get a little bit more IR below at the same time. Does that make sense? If I do a left adductor pullback, where I place my left foot a little higher than my knee, and my left femur is in internal rotation, right? That internal rotation will eventually help my right shoulder internal rotation. Because look what happens if I internal rotate my right arm. I bend to my left, right? What happens when I internal rotate my left femur? I bend to my left. So whatever I'm fixing down here will have a direct effect up here. That's why they say it, left AIC, right BC pattern. If you make a change up here, we'll give you a change down here too. All right, that's how the body works. You gotta connect those. Once you get more into PRI and take all the courses, you're gonna see that, oh, okay, that's what a right BC does to the left AIC and vice versa. Cool? All right. Now, if ribs ER on a guy who's, let's say, a PEC, right, who has bilateral, almost bilateral ER on both sides of his body weight now will be more distributed forward on his toes. If he's more IR'd now, where I deflate, the body weight now moves back and it falls onto the heels. So if we want to feel more ground, just always make sure that you have IR on all the ribs and you want to sense less grounding on the ribs that actually ER. So, if you have a guy standing on their left, and you tell him, let's deflate, let's get all these ribs to IR. Then you tell them, breathe into your right side, but also feel like your weight is getting lighter on your right. Because chances are, how many times we would actually have to prescribe people blow out and then try and fill up your right chest wall. They're like, I can't do it. The reason why is because they're still pressing that right leg down too. But I tell them, feel your weight getting lighter even on your leg as you breathe in. And they're like, okay, now I can feel it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So flooring gives me more to open up one side of the rib cage. When PRI tells you, make sure you breathe into your right chest wall, that's not enough. As for me as a practitioner to explain it to somebody, because they don't even know what a right chest wall is. They're like, right chest wall, so you're talking about my pec. No, I'm talking about the whole thing. Just sense air getting into your right side and just let the weight off your leg slightly, like just get off the ground, and they're gonna sense that opening up. All right. When it comes to about Valsalva, and we know that if we constantly breathe in, causing that external rotation of both ribs, we carry a lot of CO2 in us. There's no proper gas exchange when there's hyperinflation. Aside from just feeling less of a ground, less grounding causes other stuff, such as even impaired sleep, early fatigue on muscles such as lumbar rectors, scalenes. We're always in a constant sympathetic response. So imagine now if I have a little bit more grounding in me, Valsalva will not have all these negative effects, which means I can still tell my powerlifter, you can still do all of this, but if I feel some grounding at the same time while I'm hyperinflated, I'm avoiding some of this stuff too, such as early fatigue, impaired nerve conduction. I would have impaired nerve conduction if I didn't feel the floor, because the less I sense stuff, the less nerves start to stimulate those muscles I need to feel the floor. Does that make sense so far? So, sensing a ground increases muscular activity. If you don't sense it, such as when I'm sitting on my chair all day, I can't feel the floor. So I'm gonna then fatigue those muscles that I use so much, such as lumbar rectors and calves, and constantly cause that impaired nerve conduction, meaning less nerve conduction will go to my hamstrings and will just constantly go to my calves again and again and again. So when it comes to Valsalva, I'm not against it, but I want to see if I can work somewhere within that. Because you're going to learn through PRI that we all need to deflate, but you're not going to apply that to the real world. The real world says, I have a powerlifter, I have a track athlete. I'm not going to tell this person, blow out the air like this and expect to sprint. At least feel the floor a little bit more while you're trying to lock yourself so much into Valsalva and extension. All right? Now, the abs have 4 layers. They have the superficial layers and they have the deep layers. Superficial layers, which we all tend to use, external obliques and rectus abdominis. We love using those muscles, especially when we go to the gym. I would say we don't barely use internal obliques or transverse abdominis, just because they require one thing that we all hate to do, and that's exhaling. Everybody thinks the transverse abdominis causes that vacuum pose that I see Arnold Schwarzenegger doing all the time. That's not a TVA. I don't know if you guys have ever heard functional patterns before, too? No? All right, so functional patterns, you guys are going to see that's, you know where the fascial lines are, anatomy trains? Okay, so functional patterns, now he took basically anatomy trains and made it into like a training protocol. Really, really cool stuff. Not when he teaches those somebody to stand always in a posture like this. He's trying to pull a TVA in. Yeah, a TVA pulls in, but also pulls ribs down. If I still have ribs that flare out, that TVA is not working fully.
What was the guy's name? Or the
Now the Aguilar,
in functional what?
functional patterns. Oh, yeah, by the way, he hates physical therapist. Just let you know. You're not gonna have a fun time with him. So, these are the most common exercises that we see at the gym when it comes to abdominal training, right? Too much superficial layers, rectus abdominis, external oblique. And what do they all have in common? Pelvis kept in an anterior tilt, lower ribs are flaring out, overuse of superficial abdominal wall, I just said that. Hip flexors go skyrocket, faulty breathing patterns, excessive neck tension. So when you see people that train their abs at the gym and they don't blow out the air at all, they're only using those superficial layers. Those superficial layers will often cause you spinal compression. For example, you have somebody that has, let's say, a big arch on the lower back, right? The only muscle preventing me now from falling way back like this now is that rectus abdominis, right? The only problem is that the rectus abdominis is not tied to ribs. Well, it is a little bit, but mostly on the sternum. So I got a string pulling me from here, then I got another string pulling me from the sternum, doing that. Do you see how I just did that now? I pull the sternum down this way.
They're so compressed.
Right. That's how it gets spinal compression. So when I have a guy that wants to blow out air and I see, bad idea. Never flex your abs when blowing out the air. You just blow. Does that make sense? We want to avoid rectus abdominis activity to avoid spinal compression, whether you're a left AIC or a PEC. We're good on that? Now, actually, before I get into that, let's talk a little bit more about the layers. You don't have the anatomy trained.
Visible body?
Yeah.
Not on that, no.
I'm going to show you guys here since I have more cooler technology. All right. So now. Doesn't want to. Anyway. So. Here's the first layer, right? External oblique. Very, very big muscle. Okay. Let me just take that out for a second. Okay. External oblique tied to the fifth rib and all the way down to the pelvis. All right. If I take that guy out, we have rectus abdominis. As you guys can see, it's also close to the sternum. Also grabs a few ribs, like the fifth rib, but it's still tied to a sternum. Right? It doesn't even attach to the false ribs, which we really want to get down. Okay? None of these, the external oblique and the rectus abdominis, they don't tie to the false ribs. Those are the false ribs, which we know what those are, right?
They're not attached to the sternum.
They're not attached to the sternum, and they're made out of cartilage too. Those are the ones that we need to reposition. So those two muscles, not attached there. We got internal oblique, tied to the lower ribs. Then the body's natural belt, TVA, tied to the lower ribs and down to the pelvis. That's why if I do that when I suck in the stomach, that thing is still stretched. Right? So, all those, and there's my diaphragm. So if all those muscles, especially the last two deep layers, the internal obliques and the transverse abdominis, pull my ribs down, domes up my diaphragm, That's what I want to achieve. If I use too much rectus abdominis and external obliques, diaphragm is still flat. I didn't pull these ribs in, I just did flexion. That's it. Does that make sense? So now, the shape of a rib cage will tell you what muscles of these 4 layers you need. And one muscle you're not going to need at all is the rectus abdominis. Okay. Let's see. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Infrasternal angles. Have you guys heard this before? Okay. Do we know a wide infrasternal angle? Narrow, right? Wide infrasternal angle, we need aggressive exhalation. Purse your lips, blow out through a straw, blow out through balloons, whatever. Make it hard. Those who have wide infrasternal angles, they're definitely going to need their IOs and TAs, but they're definitely going to need some EOs, external obliques. The reason why, which I like to hope most people know, is if I have a wide infrasternal angle, which means the ribs are flaring out way too much, I'm gonna need the help of that external oblique to pull the rib cage a little into flexion, and then the transverse abdominis and internal obliques will pull the false ribs in. So I just need this guy to just bring him here. Does that make sense? So that's why I need a little bit more harder exhalation versus a narrow, who his ribs, they actually protrude forward. Wide infrasternal angle, they look like this. Narrow, they look like that. Just like a canine, the ribs protrude forward, like mine, right? I have a narrow angle, I gotta pull ribs in. So I'm gonna do fog glass type of breathing. I don't need that much. Make sense? Those who have a very wide infrasternal angle usually will present you with a flat back. You will still see some kyphotic posture with wide infrasternal angles, but what I've seen so far is a lot of flat backs. So if I have a flat back, what muscle is the one muscle that I need to shut off? Lats. Those are the lats. Lats are what push the T-spine into further extension, specifically the upper fibers of the lats. All right? Which means I'm going to give now my patient an exercise that has his arms up with a lat hang to lengthen or inhibit the lats. By the way, whenever you guys see a stretch in PRI, it's not really a stretch. You're not trying to stretch a muscle in a PRI exercise. You're just trying to get into position and feel the length of it a little bit. You're trying to inhibit. When you see anybody that's trying to stretch a muscle through PRI, they're struggling too much. And when they struggle, the exercise becomes very ineffective. With these exercises, less is more. All right? Do you feel like a light little stretch? And breathe. Because if you tell them, feel the stretch, it's not going to work. They're still sensing tension inside the body. Does that make sense? I know I kind of got a little bit off topic. Just want to make sure. Now, narrow infrasternal angles now, they need to pull ribs in, which means I'm going to push. So whenever you see a narrow infrasternal angle and you see rounded shoulders, do not think that this is a bad thing to push. It's, oh, why am I rounding even more? You're rounding just to pull the lower ribs in. We'll get into expanding your chest after. Make sense so far? Especially on all 4 exercises, and I have a narrow infrasternal angle. James Anderson was big on this. How much flexion do I need? Narrow angle, rounded shoulders. If I go on all 4s and I super round like this, I'm telling rectus abdominis to kick in. If I'm on all 4s and I just lightly posterior tilt my pelvis, I'm good. That's all I need. That's when we say round out your back. When we say round your back, that does not mean make it into a volcano and then stay there. you're gonna use rectus abdominis way too much. You're causing spinal compression a lot and a herniated disc possible. All right? Posterior tilt your pelvis. Get into the position of a round and then sense ribs moving. Again, your sole purpose of getting on an all four is, do you sense ribs moving? Not how much do I feel my abs. Got it? So when it comes to rounding, especially on a narrow angle, round them out a little bit. When you put them on, let's say a standing posture, you tell them let's do a reach. There's a difference between and a difference between. I see them all the time, especially with bands. Let's make it a lot harder. You're not trying to make it a lot harder to cause them spinal compression. You're giving them resistance to just sense that something's pushing them back for them to push forward to sense the abdominals. That's it. So that's why when you see PRI exercises, you don't see them with monster bands. You see them like a little tube pushing. More for referencing. All right? Now, here is, if I would have had to pick a slide out of all these, this would probably be the most important one. On every exercise you're going to see in PRI, at the very bottom of a PDF where it has the exercise, it has reference centers and highlighted in bold. This helped me a lot. If I give a patient of mine a supine position, it's something that's on their back, I need to sense a floor, mid-feet, heels, and the entire back. I say mid-feet and heels. That's if I have him on hook line, if I have his feet on the ground. But if I have his feet on a wall, the wall is my ground. I just put that person in supine to teach him how to use abdominals and everything while he's on his back. But the sole purpose of the wall is to represent the ground. So when you put a person on the 90-90, they're in a squat position. So they need to sense a floor through a wall. Does that make sense? If I have now a person in sideline, this is one of the toughest ones. They need to sense their shoulder and hip on the floor. Most of these exercises on PRI, they're going to say sense left heel, right arch. But what's going on the sides where you're feeling on the ground? So that means not only am I going to press a left heel and a right arch if I have my feet on the wall, I'm also going to press a shoulder into the floor and a hip. Now I got abs. Now I feel stability on my left side while I need mobility on my right side. Does that make sense? So that helped me a lot, is make sure you also sense the shoulder and the hip pressing the floor or ground them while you're doing a sideline exercise. Quadruped, knees and palms. You give a guy an all four exercise. Don't tell them, let's just breathe. Okay, you put them into position, let's just give me 4 or 5 breaths. It's not enough. Tell them. Just stay there for a minute and just absorb of what you're feeling. Do you sense the floor? The moment you tell them that, they're gonna be like, oh wow, I actually feel my arms activating a lot more. Like I feel my chest, I feel everything. Good. You see what I'm saying now? For example, everybody stand up. And put hands on the table with knees bent. Right? Now, I'm not even going to tell you guys to breathe, but take about a minute and just sense and be more aware of what you're feeling while you have your palms on the table and with legs on the floor. You guys sense that more muscles are kicking in now? More glutes, more hamstrings, more shoulders, pecs, right? You feel that stuff? Now take a breath in. Breathe it all the way out and sense your body weight getting heavier as you blow out. Blow, blow, get it heavier, get it heavier. I see a lot of shaking going on. Take a nice breath in again. Blow out. Sense you guys pressing the floor down with your legs. Press the table down with your arms. Just sense your body weight getting heavier. Take another breath in. And blow out. Gets heavier, at least 100 pounds, getting heavier as you're blowing out. Blow, 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 blow. 3, 2, 1, rest. You guys see how that felt? So, make sure when you provide exercise to any of your clients, it's got to be nice and calm, by the way, not too much music. Just tell them, sense what they feel. Do they sense that floor? Do they feel the ground? Did you guys see how it felt just to activate more glutes and hamstrings just by sensing? All right? Have a seat. Long sitting. Long sitting, I gotta feel sit bones. Same thing when it comes to short sitting, or sitting in general. Sit bones, when it comes to sitting, are your new heels. Does that make sense? So if I'm sitting in a chair, especially on a hard surface, because with cushioning you're really not gonna feel that much, and you tell them, sense your left sit bone. Okay, I'm gonna sense it. But now I want to sense that sit bone kind of pressing the chair down. Once I do that, I feel my left abs kicking in without even breathing. So all these points that I've written up there, that's the points, these are the points that you want to press or you want to floor. Don't even walk your clients to the exercise yet, to the breathing exercise, until they establish this first. All right. Now, just a refresh of what certain muscles are going to need when it comes to sagittal plane. Sagittal plane, the most important ones: abdominals, hamstrings, glutes, dorsiflexors, and triceps. All of these muscles floor you. Right? Even the tricep. The tricep causes approximation of the glenohumeral joint. It compresses the glenohumeral joint into the socket. Right? Here are some examples that I like to prescribe. If I'm, let's say, in that first picture all the way to the left, I'm doing that lat hang. When I'm doing that lat hang, yeah, I do feel a stretch on the lats. I feel my feet on the floor. But you guys notice I put something underneath my feet there too, again, as a passive lift. When you put something underneath your feet, your brain senses that. It senses that something's pushing you up. Automatically, my feet start pressing down as a reaction. That's the flooring I want to feel. So whenever I'm doing a lat hang or anything in a squatted position, I want to still sense that my legs are pressing the floor down. I'm not just rested down there. I still got to feel some glutes and hamstrings while I'm in that position. If I'm on my back and I have the dumbbell over me, by the way, the lat hang and the exercise that I'm doing right there with arms over my head, ball between the knees, I would give to a wider external angle because those are the arms overhead, right? If I'm on my back there, where do I want to feel mostly the floor? What do I want to feel it pressing? Or actually, what do I want to press down to the floor in that position?
Back. Hold back.
Hold back and
Heels.
and heels. Which part of my back do I want to imagine that I'm pressing down more?
Thoracic.
Thoracic, but upper or lower?
Lower.
Lower. Because if I tell that person to exhale and he's trying to get lower ribs down, you want to feel the back ribs pressing into the wall, into the ground. That makes sense? So I can still sense that I'm on the floor, but I'm on my back, but am I still feeling a lot of upper thoracic, or am I feeling mid-thoracic? If I feel mid-thoracic, or sometimes I put a towel down here, and I tell them, if you feel these ribs sinking in, feel these ribs pressing the towel. That's the grounding I want to feel. Right? That's how there's another way of how to keep those lower ribs constantly down, because sometimes they have a hard time, they bring them back out again. So if you really want to keep those ribs down, is aside from using your hands, I see people doing, with IOs and TAs, they put their fingers like this, They're like, make sure your fingers do not sink in when you breathe in again. That's another way of keeping the lower ribs down. But let's say I don't want to use my hands at all. I just want to sense it through the floor. So I put a towel, mid-back, and I press the back ribs into the floor as I'm blowing out. That secures the lower ribs in the front from popping back out again. All right. Last picture all the way to the right. Again, knees bent, arms are up, she's lengthening her lats. I like to do that specific one, especially after every set of squatting. Because I know my lower back's gonna kick in like crazy when I squat heavy. I wanna make sure though, I calm my lower back muscles again by repositioning myself. But I gotta make sure that I'm pressing the floor down. That's why I still have that mat underneath her feet. She's pressing the floor down, blowing out all the air, absorbing that ground, and now she's ready to squat again without compensations. The guy down there that's pressing the wall, overhead press, that's a shoulder press. But instead of giving him a barbell to strengthen those serratus muscles because he doesn't know how to strengthen the serratus muscles any other way, I put him in the best close kinetic chain exercise possible by pressing into a wall. That wall can also be his floor, that's his ground. Sense your arms pressing the wall as the wall is pushing you right back. And the guy's not moving a muscle. All he's doing is now just breathing. All right, so he's creating a lot of shoulder stability in that position by grounding himself through a wall. All right. Main muscles are frontal plane, which is the hardest now when it comes to cueing and grounding. Main muscles, abductors, glute med, lateral abdominals, serratus. We all know that a serratus is a frontal plane muscle, right? Here now, that exercise that she's doing right there, which is a foot toward foot. My reference points now are left shoulder, left hip, and right mid shin in that position. So the most important ones are left shoulder and left hip. I'm telling her now, smash the floor with your left shoulder and your left hip. The moment she does that, her left abs start to hike off the ground. So she goes into a left side bend. Even though it doesn't really show there, but she's pressing those points. And she's feeling a lot more left abs there as opposed to the right. Then, as she's feeling that left hip on the floor and it's pressing, then she raises her left leg up. So, if I'm pulling a leg up, something else has to press down, and that's a hip. Because otherwise, they're going to lift their left leg up and their hips off the ground. All right? That sideline star that I do right there, some of the toughest side abdominals I've ever done. I feel the palm there, right? This is another side note. If I'm doing a side plank and I have my wrist in neutral, I'm less likely to feel a serratus, but I'm more likely to feel a tricep, especially if I press the pisiform. If you want to activate somebody's tricep activity or tricep stability on the shoulder, you put their palms in neutral and tell them to press that part down. That will activate the long head of the tricep in a plank position. If I want more serratus though, palm faces down. Or in other words, if you have a guy that has tennis elbow, put his wrist in neutral. If you have a guy that has golfer's elbow, you put the palm facing down. And they have to press the hypophenar. You know what a hypophenar is? Basically the thumb. When they press that down, you're actually going to feel 10 times more serratus there on the sideline. Alright?
You say palm down for golfer or tennis?
For golfers. Well, both these positions, if If you have a guy that has a tennis elbow and you try a neutral position and he's still feeling pain, put palm down. Maybe he needs some serrated strengthening first before a tricep. Okay, so try both sides. But usually what I've seen so far, with a neutral grip, feeling a tricep pressing down takes the tension off the tennis elbow and puts it more on the tricep. Whereas palm facing down, which is usually actually weakness of the wrist flexors, not tightness, is because that person's not using their wrist flexors enough. So you put palm facing down in order to enhance more pronators and wrist flexors to take off golfer's elbow. So the trick I learned from Mike Kentrell. Right. Main muscles for transverse plane. We're almost done. Glute max and median. Lower traps, obliques, and rotator cuff. Any questions on these since I mentioned lower traps? I get a lot of this. Do we know what the lower traps do?
Can you briefly explain like how the lower traps lateralize somebody to the other side?
They lateralize to a transverse plane. The lower ribs are retractors. Okay, but aside from that, if I do a right arm reach, which lower trap am I in?
Right.
The right. Huh? The right. Again, you guys got to think thoracolumbar. I'm sorry. Thoracoscapular, not scapular-thoracic. Thoracoscapular meaning your thorax is moving on the scapula. That lower trap, I'm moving a thorax on a scapula, which is there, not that. Does that make sense? So when I do a right arm reach, it's not the arm that's twisting the rib cage. It's those lower trap fibers turning it this way. So when you give a right arm reach, the arm reach is not so much of this, it's more of this. I gotta see a rotation. I see a lot of PRI therapists that are doing, and they just want to go into flexion. I'm not going into flexion. I want to see you rotating. Does that make sense? I have it on another slide here. Give me one second. Good. This was a big one that I kind of skipped. Hierarchy of planes to be established during rehab training. I'm sorry, because I kind of skipped that one. It was right before. Yeah, when I explained the wide and narrow infrasternal angle. That was the big money maker for me. Reestablish sagittal plane first, below T8 mostly. T8, we know that mid zone. T8 is where all three planes of motion intersect. Okay. Above T8, I need a lot of freaking mobility. I need a lot of transverse above T8. Below T8, I need a lot of frontal and sagittal plane control. Right? Or in other words, above my diaphragm, I need mobility. Below my diaphragm, I need stability. You guys are going to learn that on the I&I course. Mike Cantrell just nails it. All right? So, when it comes to flexion, extension, abduction, you guys got to go legs. When it comes into rotations and all that stuff, thorax. But you see what it says there? Allow them to sense the transverse plane, which means I want them to sense a rib cage turning. Not I want to strengthen them there. So, everybody get up. Let's do something cool. Everybody have left leg back, right leg forward. Okay. Left arm forward. And everybody put your hands on their thorax on their right side. Okay. Now, everybody sense their left heel lightly pressing into the floor. All right? Now, take a breath in. Blow out, reach forward with your left arms. And pull your right shoulders back. Blow, 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 blow. Pause. Now, I want you guys to sense the air getting into your right hand. Take a breath. Blow out, reach further forward. Hold. Keep sensing your left heel. Do not let your hips go forward on the left. Breathe into your right hand. Sense those ribs rising. Blow out, reach further. Make sure you're feeling your left heels. 3, 2, 1. Take a breath in. Blow out. 3, 2, 1. Rest. You guys sense how that felt? Right? Felt ribs moving. Right? I want them to sense a rib cage twisting and turning when I give transverse plane activity. But I said make sure you feel left heel flooring. Because when I floor it down, I got sagittal and frontal plane stability here, but all mobility happens through here. Make sense? Let's see this. So main muscles, like I said, glute max, lower traps, obliques, rotator cuffs. Some examples that I have here. If I'm on, let's say now a standing position, and I'm doing a unilateral serratus punch, just like the one we did right now, right? You're always going to see in PRI exercise that both feet are flat on the ground. On other, such as FP, functional patterns, you're going to see their stances with one leg flat on the ground, but the other one, their toes on the ground, but the heel is off. Because that mimics running and walking, right? Great, I like that. The only problem is, I'm not going to give my guy anything with the heel off the ground, because I need them to sense first a ground before they make that transition to take the heel off the floor. So that's why PRI has, in certain running stances, they don't have them with one foot flat and the other one is only the toes down, giving them an exercise like this. They have the heel down on the other leg too, because they want them to floor that, sense it, and that's the only way you're going to be able to open up ribs. If the heel is off the floor, you're going to have a very, very hard time opening up ribs on either side. All right? Especially in PRI terms, the left hip. Remember this, guys. If you do not have internal rotation of your left hip, it is impossible to open up the left posterior mediastinum. Fact. If you don't have IR on that left hip, you cannot open this left upper back. Because the internal rotation of the left femur puts the pelvis in a posterior tilt. And you guys, I don't know if some of you may have taken a pelvis restoration. The pelvis restoration, on the inside of the pelvis is called an inlet. On the under part of that pelvis is called an outlet. When we have an anterior tilt on left, that left pelvic bone also did an adduction, like this. So whenever that pelvic bone goes into a deduction, that puts everything in line along with my ribs to be able to pull the ribs down, and then I can open up my upper back. If I'm in external rotation on my left femur, that pelvic bone goes into abduction again. So these ribs are going to still stay flared out. Make sense so far? So if anybody, you want to open up somebody's back, make sure they have femurs, especially the left, in IR. Alright, so if I give an exercise like this, and I tell them breathe into your back, yeah, they're going to breathe into it. But if they IR like this, they're going to be like, whoa, I feel it even more. Okay, because it just locks you in there, compresses the hip joints into the sockets where I need it. I feel more muscular activity going through my glutes and hamstrings and adductors. Gives me more abs. The more abs, the more my obliques can stay in, the more my ribs can stay in, the more I can open up my back. Following me so far? All right. So, if I'm doing a transverse plane exercise and I feel both my legs on the floor, again, I press the floor down. I feel now my whole pelvis just not moving 1 inch. And then I want to sense my rib cage turning. So the resistance that I have on the pulley system is not that much. It's light enough that I feel that I'm pushing something, but I want to sense on the other side. If I put so much resistance on that cable, I'm going to be more concerned about me pushing it rather than me sensing that rotation of that rib cage. Okay? So go light on this stuff. Especially if I'm on the ground too. If I'm on the ground in sideline, again I'm going to think left shoulder, left hip pressing the floor, or right shoulder, right hip pressing the floor to open up the other side. Does that make sense?
Do you have both heels grounded the same, or is the
No,
back one
no.
heavier?
Since my heels are not really on the floor. Are you talking
I'm
about the
in the
sideline?
left side.
Oh, you're talking about the standing ones, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, both heels are pressing down.
They're equal, like the back one isn't more? Okay. So it's very
Right.
lightweight
Yeah.
on the cables.
Yeah.
So you're trying to feel the...
Lightweight on the cables, but a lot of pressure going down through the heels. Both heels.
So this is like an abdominal exercise?
Yeah. Well, this is more of a stability exercise below and a mobility on top.
Okay.
All right. So that's what I'm trying to establish. Is again, I'm taking 2 stances. On the top one, I have my right leg forward. On the bottom one, I have my left leg forward. I'm just basically going through the phases of walking. Does my rib cage know how to twist this way, and does it know how to twist this way on this part of walking? Does that make sense? So I want to sense my rib cage twisting and turning depending on which phase of gait am I in. If I'm on my left, if my left leg is forward and my right leg is back, my rib cage has to sense rotation left, but it also has to sense rotation right if I walk the other side. Do I sense this happening when I'm walking? If I don't feel it and I have my arms like this and looking into a phone, I don't sense a rotation. If I can't sense a rotation, lower back muscles kick in and get tight. Right? So that's why I'm doing all this transverse stuff, but this is the last stuff I'll do though. The first thing I attack is sagittal. Every time. You got sagittal, move on to frontal. If you have a guy that cannot get his arms up this way, do not even think about giving him frontal plane. Get his shoulders all the way up first. If he can't touch his toes, do whatever you can to make him go that far down because he needs to squat. If you can't touch your toes, you should not be squatting. All right? So establish sagittal plane control first, then move on to frontal. Last is transverse. That's the hierarchy. All right? Position is key. Like we said, in supine, I always do it first. It is the safest. They feel the most ground there because you're on your back. If I'm in sideline, it's most appropriate for frontal plane exercises, especially initially. Abductors, serratus, sideline are best when it comes to feeling all those frontal plane muscles. Quadruped is great for those who have a narrow infrasternal angle, just like we mentioned. Long seated now is appropriate for those who have very flexible hamstrings, i.e. women. Always stretch their hamstrings, or those who sit a lot. So long sitting, short sitting, and sitting, they all need to feel their sit bones. Those who have very flexible hamstrings, I will put them in long sitting first. We all know what long sitting is, right? Okay. And then I would have them walk on their sit bones. Because like I said, sit bones become heels. I'm not going to take them into a standing exercise feeling heels when they don't even know how to feel this going on with their pelvis. So if I'm walking with a pelvis, I'm doing that. Does that make sense? I want them to feel this first through walking on their asses before I have them standing on heels. I want them to sense a floor or ground, pressing one ischial bone to one side, another ischial bone to the other side while they're walking on their ass. So I would give that exercise to somebody who has very flexible hamstrings. Those who can't sit upright in a long seated position, do not give that exercise. You will give them on a chair or short seated positions, which their legs are close to them and they're reaching forward, right? So if I have a short seated position patient, I tell them not only just blow out and reach forward, but press your sit bones into the floor. And it will not take them so much to feel the abdominals after that. Okay? Sitting, definitely give it to those who sit a lot. Right? I have many office junkies that come to me and they're like, I want to deadlift, I want to do this, I want to do that. Okay, but do you know how to feel those muscles while you're at your desk? Because if you can't sense glutes and hamstrings while you're sitting for 8 hours a day, don't expect to go and perform better when you're deadlifting. It's not gonna happen. You gotta feel those muscles always activated. So give them sitting exercise for those who are sitting junkies. Or those who have very tight hamstrings, meaning they can't reach down. Again, it does not mean that they're exactly tight. They might be just tensed to prevent further anterior tilting. They're not flexible enough because they never needed that kind of flexibility. So whenever they say, I try and stretch my hamstrings more and more so I can be able to touch my toes, okay, but where do you need that in life? If you're sitting on your ass all day, do you need that? Do you need flexible hamstrings like that? But if you sit on your ass all day and you expect not to go do a meet in 3 weeks, deadlifting and all that, yeah, you're gonna need some flexibility. So when you're taking a person's history, ask them, do they really need their hamstrings to be that lengthened to go to full 90, like Ron Hiroshika takes it? You understand what I'm saying? So another important thing that helped me in my practice is learn your patient first. What is his lifestyle? Do the exercises that you give fit to his lifestyle, not to what you think is going to get him neutral? Got it? I give them the very simplest exercise that they can adapt at work, at home, gym, wherever, according to what they want. Right? Standing is the most complex. You're gonna feel left heel, maybe a right arch. You're starting to use now polyarticular chain muscles to the roof. So standing are the last positions to worry about. Get your sideline, your supine, your all fours down. Standing is the last rep. Okay? Now, a few tips for grounding. Do not lock your knees when standing. One thing that I like to do though is the third one. It says shift from side to side when standing and with knees slightly bent for frontal plane control. I like to do that a lot. Knees bent and I do this. The moment I do that, I feel this leg pressing up and I feel the ground. I feel the ground, I press it back down and it shifts me over to the other side. Press it back down to the other side. I'm doing a lot of adductor activity right now. Okay? So even if you have a guy that's a PEC and it's hard for them to get their legs down on both sides, just give them something like this and watch how their legs will fold down. No blowing balloons or anything like that. Just by them sensing weight shifting. Okay? Keep peripheral visual fields open. And again, since we like to keep our vision very focal, it stays that way. We lose peripheral sight. So when we lose peripheral vision, we feel threatened. When we see clearly, like, oh, okay, it looks like I belong here now. It feels great. Now I feel the earth underneath me. Always keep peripheral visual field open. Feel the ground pushing up as you descend during your squat and push away as you ascend. We already said that. Feel your sit bones when you shoulder press. That's another great one. If I wanted to shoulder press, if I'm pushing up, I gotta push something back down, which means I'm gonna smash my ass into the seat. Watch how that feels. Push your mid back on the bench when bench pressing. So when I bench, back presses into the bench. So those are the few tips that I like to do when it comes to grounding. The main important thing to remember though is if you have increased air pressure on one side, you're going to feel less grounding on that side. If you have more air pressure on this left side, you have more sympathetic nervous system activity. Little fun fact. Take 2 blood pressure cuffs and put them on each arm. Whichever arm has the highest blood pressure, your sympathetic nervous system is skyrocket on that side. Does that make sense? Higher blood pressure, more sympathetic on that side. Lower blood pressure, lower sympathetic. Pretty cool stuff, huh? So, if you do an exercise after with some grounding, watch how they change. This one becomes higher, that one becomes lower. Amazing stuff. All right? Sense a floor. So now, up. I want everybody to lean on their left leg. Does not mean that the right foot comes off, just still keep it on the floor, but feel 80% of your weight falling onto your left. Okay? Left hip, push it back. That you can feel that it's on top of the left heel. Got it? Do we all feel the heel now? Left arm down, looking towards your left foot. And the right arm back. Just feel a retraction. Does everybody feel the left hamstring here? Feel it? Yeah? Now, take a breath in. Blow out and reach down with your left. Blow, 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 blow. Hold. Keep a slight bend on the left knee now. Okay. Take a breath in. Blow out, reach further down. So you guys start to sense your left inner thigh now? Alright. Take a breath in. Blow out, reach down that left arm and feel the floor pushing you up on the left. Alright. Take a breath in. Blow out. Alright. Now, take a breath in and sense your right rib cage opening up, getting your right side lighter. Breathe in. There you go. Blow out, reach further down. And rest. You guys felt that? If you guys feel the weight getting heavier and heavier, more muscles start to kick in, especially the PRI ones that we want. Adductor, hamstring, glute med. You saw how the further you went down and down and you felt that the floor was pushing you up, the adductor was kicking in. The adductor and the internal rotators, glute med, start to compress the joint. The more they compress the joints, the more muscular activity you'll feel here. So that's that grounding effect I want to get. You can literally prescribe only one exercise to your clients, and that will be their exercise, because it takes a lot for them to just sense that. All right? So always remember that, and I always say this, the floor from here on in is your leg press. If you know that you're going to squat, push the floor away. If you know you're walking, push the floor away as you're walking forward, and just sense your heels pushing the floor away. More glutes and hamstrings. So anytime you take a staircase, push the stairs down instead of up. In PRI, we say walk backwards because we're pushing the stairs away. Right? So when it comes to grounding, if you want to feel more muscular activity, just remember that it's just sense of floor first, stay there for a little bit, absorb what you're feeling, and then start doing your exercises. Don't rush into, let's start breathing. Does that make sense? That's it. I'll see you guys. So these are all the references that I used aside from PRIs. I got everything here from vision stuff, from auditory, that helps us ground even more. when we have high frequencies coming in and out through our ears, our sympathetic nervous system starts to kick in. When we hear lower and lower tones, more calmer, we feel more calmer, we feel more to the ground. So that's why these exercises that you prescribe to your clients, do not give them on very stimulating areas. Too much light. You go to PRI headquarters, inside their room, it's quiet. There's no music. It's kind of awkward sometimes because you can actually hear the breath of your practitioner, but that's the point, is you want to hear your own breath even while doing exercises. That makes sense? So make sure that it's quiet environment and low lighting when you're prescribing at least the initial exercises to your clients. Other than that, guys, that's all I can say as far as grounding. Otherwise, if I went a little bit more, I'd probably be here for 3 days. So, any questions? You guys are probably fried, I can see that. Yeah. Sure.
So I'm a personal trainer and I work with general population clients, and then sometimes I'll have somebody who, well, actually in the past week I had a couple people with sciatica, middle-aged women, and they're so used to feeling pain.
Okay.
And I'm wondering for like just the basic approach.
Oh, okay. So, have you never taken PRI before?
I've taken myokin in the fitness course.
Fitness course. Fitness course is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I wish they kind of taught a little bit better because the fitness course needs, I would say, a few more days more because we all have questions on it. If you have a person with sciatica pain, first of all, the pain looks like this. Is it more on the right? Is it more on the left? You can't really tell, right?
I didn't ask.
We usually feel more sciatica pain on the right because there's more compression forces on the right side. On the left side, we usually get more overuse injuries, tendinitis and things like that. If that person is feeling sciatica pain, that means that there's too much compression, which means you have to decompress. Remember when I said about the psoas, the ones that you asked about pressing the floor down? That's what I would give to a sciatica patient, is I need them to distract down here by making my right leg longer. What makes my right leg longer, aside from a psoas, is a glute max. So they're going to get double the benefit of relieving the sciatica pain by strengthening the glute max, which is very important, as well as distracting the lumbar spine to take the pressure off of the disc. If their sciatica pain is coming from a disc, a lot of people say I have sciatica pain, but sciatica is the pain going all the way down to your leg. People that say I have sciatica pain but they do this, that's not sciatica, that's SI joint pain. So there's a difference. I would still give though the same approach, getting the right leg longer if it's on the right. If it's on the left, I don't know if I'll give distraction. I have to first see my kinematic if my adduction is good. If I have good adduction, knee drops all the way, I would not get that leg to lengthen. If I have bad adduction, I will first have them adduct on that left leg. Because if their leg is out and they're still feeling sciatica pain, chances are on the left you might feel femoral nerve pain. They usually get on the thigh. This side needs more adduction. This side needs more abduction. But most of the times that I see for sciatica pain is usually on the right side. So if you get it on the right, you gotta distract it. If it falls onto the left, I will do PRI guidelines first. Try and adduct it, do like pullbacks and things like that first. And if it changes, great. If it doesn't change, you need to do the exact opposite. External rotation, abduction, the whole 9 yards. All right, so it all depends which leg it is, and depends on your manual tests, like the adduction drop test, the extension drop test. If your tests are, all of them are neutral, which chances are they're not going to be, clear out whatever you have to clear out. If you know that that person is missing adduction, focus on adduction and see what kind of change that creates now to that person that has sciatica. If he's feeling pain as when he's he's pressing the leg into the floor and he's feeling sciatica pain, that means he needs to step away from it. If he's feeling pain on the other side, on the left for example, but he's standing on his right, he's like, I feel the pain, but he does this and be like, okay, I feel a bit better, you might need to compress this side. Does that make better sense now?
I think so.
Right, so see when do they feel the pain? It's an easy test. Let's say I have sciatica pain going down to my right side. If I stand on it and symptoms start to arise, that means you need to distract it. More glute max, more lengthening of that right leg, stretching of the right lat. If I have pain on the right and I get off from it and then it starts to hurt, I may need to go back to that right side first again and see if I can strengthen my adductor, my hamstring. Basically, whatever I'll do to my left, I'll do to my right. There's no such thing, there's not a bad thing to do right adductor pullbacks, by the way. If you have a hard PEC, it's like this. We all learned in PRI that if you have a guy that's a PEC bilaterally locked, you give like something bilateral for them to do, like both arms reaching. I don't know if you guys saw that. Sometimes PECs are very hard to get down. Pick a side. I usually pick the right side. I give them a right adductor pullback to get them into a left AIC. You see how I did that? So it's going to be hard for you to get a PEC out with bilateral activity, especially if they're like bodybuilders or anything, because it's just not stimulating enough. So I pick a side and I said, let's do right adductor pullbacks and get you from a PEC now into a left AIC. From a left AIC, right AIC. Okay? If it comes down now to your guy who has sciatica, first, analyze. Do they have internal rotation? Do they have adduction on both legs? But see if they're compressed or not, meaning are they standing on it and they feel the pain or not. If they're not on that same leg and they feel the pain, focus on giving more activity on the right side, such as adductors, to get them to stand on it better. That's it. They need to sense the floor. Does that make more sense then?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of? If you have more questions like that, let me know. I know it's a little bit tricky because I have to see the person in front of me
Yeah, sure.
to see that, because I have to see which hip it is. Right? Because different on the left, different on the right. And so many scenarios can play into role here. Alright? Any other questions, guys?
So kind of like you were just saying, everything's context dependent. But in terms of displaying sagittal competency, do you find that there are like benchmarks from a lot of your clients where you're like, okay, you can progress now to the frontal plane?
Absolutely. We actually do this in the fitness course. I don't know if you took the fitness course?
I'm not.
Okay. See, if I had a Dell here, it would be pretty awesome. But there's an exercise that you're lying on your back and you have a PVC pipe. And you're curled up in a little ball. And you're trying in one breath to get that PVC pipe over your feet and under your ass, then back out again. You can do that, and I thought the PRI instructors were full of shit when they said that, but it actually is true. If you can do that, your sagittal plane's fine. There's one little catch to that though, is it does not really assess shoulder flexion, because your arms are still down here. Sagittal plane, grab your all sagittal plane tests, which is 2 actually. Extension drop test and shoulder flexion. You got that, move on. But I never ever give only sagittal plane exercises first initially to my patients. If I were to have to give, let's say, 3 sagittal plane exercises, 1 will be a frontal. I gotta slowly introduce something frontal to his exercise prescription, because frontal plane is by far the most important plane. We all can get sagittal. We can all get transverse, twist, and turn. Frontal is the hardest though. That's why if you guys take courses with Mike Cantrell, there's no better guy when it comes to frontal plane than him. If you guys take anything that comes with a rib cage, James Anderson. Nobody nails it like him. Everybody in PRI has like their own thing. Ron gets too philosophical.
So I've heard a lot of people say like transverse plane or frontal plane can loosen you up for sagittal plane, so it sounds like you agree with that.
Say it again.
So like if you like get into, like you have your client go into the transverse plane a little bit, frontal as well, I think, before they display sagittal competency, it might loosen them up for the sagittal plane.
It might. You know, I've given some of my clients actually retro stairs, which is all three of them in one shot, as long as they're able to know how to do it. Because sometimes we might give, let's say, like a 90-90 exercise, but it's so easy for them to do that. Progress them later on. But it's going to be very hard if you have a guy that's so locked up to give him a transverse and a frontal plane and feel all the necessary muscles and get them unlocked like that. Unless they have great body awareness and how to feel those muscles, yeah, go right ahead. But if they don't, no, don't even rush it. So it depends really on the person. Anything else, guys?
So I've got a few clients that we just do strength training, but I've seen more often than the clients that I can count, when we're like a split stance, like doing any sort of lunge or squat, that on the right, when we have that right leg in front, left leg back, not only are they less balanced, but also their right hip seems to shift, like abducts to the right side. And I can't recall seeing anybody do that on the left side. But I can, you know, I've taken PRI and I'm a strength coach, but I can't help but think like this is something beyond, you know, like strength weaknesses or balance or an injury. Like I'm thinking that's more to do with positional breathing, things like that.
I've seen that too, actually.
Yeah.
One thing they have great, and let's take it now with PRI. Those who step forward their right leg, you actually see them abduct. What you're seeing is this, and I see that too. I see a right knee caving in while an ass is going out. They're missing abduction of their leg. They're missing a glute max. They're missing their inability to external rotate their right femur and make the knee go straight like this. What they're doing is they're still keeping it back. They're pushing it forward, but then their knee goes in. And then they stick their ass out to counterbalance. Does that make sense so far? Especially lunges, I had to correct everyone's lunge. If I have a lunge that's that big, you will see that difference, because now the distance is so wide and you have 2 points and you're trying to balance yourself out. Very unlikely that I'm going to feel a ground here. I'm going to feel a ground if my stance is smaller. And I'm not moving forward, I'm dropping down. Right? I hope you guys can see my stance here. You guys see it from there? Actually, I'm not going to go like this. Right? I just feel like I'm going forward. I'm going to go like this. And I'm going to push the floor down. See how I did that? This knee comes close to the other. This knee passes over toes. I feel a heel pressing down. Now I feel glutes and hamstrings. No kneecap pain. This is a leg press, right? So I'm here and I push down and I push. Small little stances, which gives me more stability. Then I can go bigger here and push down. But that's a lot harder. See this? That's harder. Here, not that hard. But this feels more like a press. This feels like a pull. Make sense now? You're going to see this more if their stance is this big. Put them a little closer where they feel safe. They're like, oh, I feel that better. Okay?
It's like we're watching you in the zoo.
So just a quick question, the ball in between the knees, is that just a cue for a femoral internal rotation?
Internal. It's for hip shift. Okay? And I believe you see that on my Instagram. Right
I
there.
saw it over there.
Oh, there? Oh, okay.
Pictures.
It's more for me to hip shift. Alright, so I gotta roll the ball between my knees. If I just keep it there, that's just to increase the activity of my adductors. But if you see me doing this, it tells me that I gotta learn how to hip shift without my legs going out to the sides. You're gonna see that with a retro stairs exercise. If you see them with their legs going out to the side, going to the next step behind them, they don't have internal rotation. You tell them, march back. Keep the knees close in. Because if I bring my right leg back, my right leg back, I'm hip shifting there, hip shifting here. That's retro stairs. So make sure everyone's feet has to look straight ahead, not out. Even when they're squatting. When they're squatting, they can have their feet out if they establish control here first. Meaning, keep them there. Do they feel glutes and hamstrings there? Do they feel it here? Do they feel it here? If they lose it, and then you start seeing their legs kind of coming out, they're coming out because their femoral heads are not getting into the socket. So they need a lot of internal rotation, adduction. All right? So if you guys see one of my Instagram videos, put the ball between my knees and I start walking back, like that. I do retro walking, that's all it was. But I loosened up my posterior hip capsules and I'm able to squat a lot deeper. Okay, if you see them external rotating, capsules are too tight. Make sense? More questions? Go ahead.
I have 2 male clients that will not exhale. And one is like huge, like, and I cannot get him to even inhale into his back ribs. He's so locked down.
Yes.
He's made some progress, I will say that, but any kind of cueing that
He cannot exhale.
he can exhale, but it kind of stops and he gets really wussy in it. You know what I mean? I don't say that to him, but
Okay.
I mean, what they do.
What kind of positions did you give him?
Supine, I had him on the,
Bad idea.
really?
Bad idea.
Okay, thanks for your honesty.
If that's
I
the
appreciate
same
it.
answer I got all the time.
Okay,
If you have a guy that's really hard for them to blow out air, I will not give supine
okay,
because they're like this. You give them all 4
okay,
or short seat.
okay.
Put him here and tell him to blow. Shit, I got abs. That's it.
Okay.
They're in full flexion there. Then take them into supine. I want to go from full maximum abdominals to supine to sitting, standing. You see that? So if I have a guy that's really weak on their abs, put them in the best possible position where both attachments of the abs are closer together and strengthen them there first.
Okay.
Then start elongating them here and strengthen them there. And here.
Child's pose too would be okay, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fitness course. We have an exercise called a child's pose plank. We start in a child's pose and then we extend the legs back. That's the progress. See what I'm getting
Yeah,
at?
yeah. Great, thank you.
Great exercise. Great question. Next, come on, one more questions here.
So kind of going with like the femoral internal rotation. So would you have like a similar approach if someone had like femoral like anteversion into that nature, like different?
Okay. That's actually a very good question. If you see that anteversion or retroversion, meanwhile you know that, let's say you have a left hip that you know should be retroverted, but it's anteverted. That's pathological. Remember we say patho-PEC? So, I've seen this before. I've had a PEC, bilateral extension chain person, that had a negative adduction drop test on left, but positive on right. If you have a PEC, or even a left AIC, and it's not really normal to you that you see a left leg dropping but a right doesn't, or you see excessive external rotation on their left arm, but not so much of internal, they blew out ligaments. There goes their labrums. All right? Or if I see a right glenohumeral joint that should have a good locking of internal rotation, but their arms go down. No labrum. Same thing when it comes to anteversion, retroversion. Suspect something tissue-wise now, something labrum that kind of misdirected their femoral position. Right? That's a good question. There comes a point in time when we use PRI. Okay, PRI for me is more when I deal with overuse injuries and compensation patterns. But when you have a clear orthopedic issue, such as frozen shoulder, such as an ACL sprain, you guys now gotta go out orthopedically to treat this person, to help this person. You're not gonna go into PRI. I had a person that had a frozen shoulder, cannot flex, cannot external rotate. What can I possibly give them PRI-wise to get their arms back there? That's a clear orthopedic problem, which means their ligaments are so fused together, I gotta take that arm and stay with them in that locked external rotating position that's painful for at least 20 minutes and just let it stretch. All right, so there comes a point in time when you use PRI. If you have a guy that has a femur that's too retroverted or too anteverted, that's not normal to you, go get an MRI just to be safe. All right?
What about scoliosis? So I have a nice little lady. I'll show you this. That's how she looks like, right? She has a really tough time just to even exhale. There's some more pictures. If you go left and right, you can see the other side.
I don't know if you guys can see it from here, but typical, right? Right shoulder's lower than left. This person looks like she's side bent to the right. So her lumbar spine curves to the left, up the back goes to the right like this. What that is, and again, you're gonna hear Ron say this all the time too, is that we kind of hate the word scoliosis. Unless you have that big of a curve, like a 40-degree angle curve, I would call that scoliosis. These are curvatures, normal curvatures. It's just that that person has more curvatures because there's a lot of sensory mismatch. People with scoliosis have a lot of sensory mismatch. Their eyes, one eye does not see the same way as the other can. One ear does not hear the same way as the other can. Their jaw positions just to one side. Brain activity is a lot different. Their senses on both sides of their body, way different, as opposed to as a little bit of a straighter curvature. Scoliotic people need a lot more help than they can think of, just putting rods in their backs or something like that. What was your question about scoliosis?
How do you fucking start?
Welcome to PRI.
Yeah.
First is, it looks like that person, she had her arms like this too much. She looks like she had tight lats. First of all, do they have a core? I start there first. Give anybody abs, they'll love you forever. You're not gonna get them any better, but you're not gonna get them any worse. Actually, you're gonna get them better. Sorry about that. You're definitely not gonna get them worse if you gave them a core, if you give them abs. I would focus on the ab that's weakest the most. Usually it's the left. Strengthen up that left ab and see how much their posture changes. Even if they're just standing from here to here, matters a lot. 2 exercises that I always give is an all four and a left adductor pullback. I don't know if you're taking PRI?
Not yet.
Okay. You will.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 exercises that I like to utilize when I start with anyone that has scoliotic postures. Do they sense both legs on the floor at the same time instead of just one? With scoliosis, you need to basically focus on making sure that they feel their body weight on both legs. So now, if you see them too side bent to the right, stretch out their right lat and flex their left ab at the same time. All right, so it's kind of hard for me now to tell you exactly what to do with it because I'm not in the gym. If I was in the gym, I'd show you. But with scoliotic people is, do they sense where they're at first? Do they sense that they have a left leg? If they don't sense that, they're always gonna stand on the bad leg that keeps giving them scoliosis. For me, I would like to see those curvatures in reverse. I would like to see her from here, literally to here, even if it's excessive. That's neutrality to me. Can you do the same thing from here to here, exactly the same way? I'm not looking to get your spine straight until I get all your organs and put them right dead ass in the middle, and then you'll be like straight. You can never, ever, ever, ever get anyone symmetrical. It's impossible, okay? You can kind of get them there, but your main focus is, do they function that they're symmetrical? Not, do they look symmetrical, ever. I went that with the same idea. I was like, why they don't look straight? I don't care. Can they climb mountains? That's it. That's neutrality to me. In fitness course, they said the best thing. We want variability. We want your body to adapt to anything we give it. Rock climbing, weight training, skydiving, shooting guns. I don't care what it is. Is your body able to withstand all that stuff? Can your scoliosis adapt to all those things? Scoliosis means that they developed in such a way that they try to prevent themselves from falling. That's what scoliosis is. They fix their curvatures in such a way to get their senses in alignment for them not to fall. That's it. With scoliosis people, you just gotta make sure that they have great balance. If they have balance that they suck on one side and they're good on the other, focus on balance on the other. Right? So there you have balance issues. Scoliotic people need a lot of help. They need their optometrist, they need their ear doctor, they need jaw repositioning, they need a lot of stuff. So you gotta ask them, do you have jaw pain? Do you have migraines? Do you have headaches? Grinding teeth? Maybe you should get that checked first before I start with you with exercises, because this might bring back all of the other stuff. You have no idea the power of the jaw. Ridiculous. Okay, especially him. He's my patient.